Hey, hey you. Come here for a sec. Sit. Let me talk to you real quick. Yeah, you. The one who thinks you're walking through life solo like nobody gives a damn whether you sink or swim. You got that look, the one people get when they've been carrying everything alone for way too long. You know the vibe, shoulders tight, eyes tired, heart feeling like it's doing overtime without pay. Yeah, I know that look. I've worn that look. But let me tell you something that'll flip your whole damn worldview sideways. You think nobody cares? You really think no one's paying attention? You honestly believe you've been moving through fire without a single soul noticing the burn marks? Nah. Not even close. See, you've been operating under this illusion that because people aren't loud about loving you, they don't. Because they're not texting paragraphs or applauding your every little victory. They're not in your corner. But here's the thing you forgot. Real loyalty doesn't need a microphone. Real protection doesn't need a spotlight. Some of the most dangerous, powerful, and loyal people in your orbit. They don't post. They don't brag. They don't announce. They move in shadows, clean, efficient, surgical. And while you've been stressing over who likes you, who supports you, who checks on you, someone else has been doing something way more important on your behalf, ending threats before they even get close to you. Let that sink in for a second. Yeah. Let it hit your chest because you felt it, haven't you? Those moments where things could have gone extremely left, but somehow, some way, something, or someone stepped in before the blow landed. That weird feeling like the universe pulled a "not this one, not today" around you. You ever noticed how certain people who meant you harm just vanish from your life? Go quiet. Lose access, get exposed, get blocked by the universe before they ever get to cross your line. That ain't luck. That ain't coincidence. That's protection you weren't even aware you had. Because the truth is, you're not walking alone. You're walking guarded. You're not unsupported. You're shielded. And honestly, it scares people. It confuses people. Because they swear you're defenseless until they try something. And then, something shuts it down before they can even drag breath into their lungs. Someone out there has your name circled in red for the right reasons. Someone out there decided you're worth defending quietly. Someone out there said, touch them and watch how fast your world flips. And yeah, maybe you don't know who it is. Maybe you'll never know. But you don't need to. You just need to understand the truth. Your life hasn't been lucky. It's been protected. Protected from the kind of threats you never even heard about. Protected from jealous people who whispered your name with the wrong tone. Protected from snakes that slid too close. Protected from people pretending to be friends while scouting for weakness. You were never unprotected. You were just unaware. And honestly, that's how real protection works. Silent, invisible, consistent. You walk into rooms thinking nobody's watching you, but, oh, they are. And not the haters, not the doubters, not the people waiting for you to fail. I'm talking about the ones who keep your name in rooms you've never stepped foot in. The ones who say, don't touch them, don't try them, don't play with them. The ones who shut conversations down when your name comes up. The ones who end threats the moment they start forming. It's wild, right? How you thought you were alone. And all this time, you had a silent force field around you. You're the type of person people would go to war for without you ever knowing a battle even happened. You're the type of person others shield instinctively. Not because you're weak, but because your purpose is too damn valuable for cheap chaos to touch. Whether you're aware of it or not, your presence shakes rooms. Your energy makes insecure people sweat. Your growth threatens small minds. Your name carries weight, even when you feel invisible. And yeah, sure, you've cried alone. You've fought alone. You've healed alone. But you've never been targeted alone. Never been watched alone. Never been protected alone. Someone has been stepping in for you quietly. Someone has been making sure things don't get as bad as they could. Someone has been pulling strings behind the scenes because you're not meant to fall the way you fear you will. You're not alone. You never were. And the crazy part? You're only just waking up to how powerful that makes you. And you're sitting there, still trying to figure out why you've survived storms that should have wiped you out. Why you've walked through hell with burns that healed faster than they should have. Why every attempt to break you somehow backfired on the people who initiated it. And that's not random. That's not life being life. That's somebody putting their foot down for you behind curtains you've never seen pulled back. You keep asking yourself, why me? Why does it feel like every time I'm about to collapse, something shifts? And you don't realize you've got protection that doesn't announce itself. It just reacts, instantly, aggressively, unapologetically, before you even know there was a threat forming in the first place. People have written your name in their little secret group chats, thinking they're safe, thinking you're clueless, thinking nobody's watching on your behalf. But every time someone tries to move funny with you, it's like life sends this invisible enforcement squad that shuts their whole plan down before it even gets momentum. And that's what keeps you wondering why they look uncomfortable around you without you doing anything. They know, they can feel it. They feel that energy around you, that thing that makes petty people hesitate, that thing that makes manipulators stutter, that thing that makes the wrong ones back up without understanding why their chest tightens when they try to step toward you with bad intentions. You walk into a room thinking you're just existing. Meanwhile, there's a whole unseen ripple effect that follows you. A pressure in the air that warns the room, don't misread this one, don't misjudge this one, don't underestimate this one. And half the time, you think people are being weird, but really they're reacting to something orbiting you that they can't describe. And it's crazy how you keep assuming you're moving unguarded, when the truth is you've been spiritually, emotionally, psychologically escorted for years without knowing the route was being cleared for you ahead of time. You ever notice how some people start plotting against you, and out of nowhere their own life starts glitching, like they tried to throw a brick at you, but their own ceiling collapsed first? People swear that's karma, but nah, that's interference. That's someone saying, don't touch what you don't understand. That's someone protecting your trajectory because they see what you're becoming, even if you don't fully see it yet. And the wildest part is you keep feeling abandoned. You keep assuming you're overlooked. You keep thinking you're unsupported because the people protecting you aren't loud about it. They don't text you. They don't check in. They don't announce that they shut down 3 threats last week. Without you hearing a whisper about it, they just do it, quietly, consistently, without flexing what they've shielded you from. Your life has been calmer than your enemies expected. Your life has been safer than your heartbreak predicted. Your life has been steadier than the chaos around you suggested. And that's because somebody behind the scenes said your purpose is too important to leave vulnerable to small-minded sabotage, like a Imagine thinking you're unprotected when every danger sent your way has been intercepted long before it reached your doorstep. People don't understand why messing with you leaves them drained, why trying to sabotage you makes their own plans unravel, why talking about you negatively makes weird things start happening in their life. And you're out here thinking you're powerless, while the universe runs a silent defense system every time someone's intentions turn sour toward you. There's a reason certain people fear you without you ever raising your voice. There's a reason people get uneasy when they lie to you. There's a reason users disappear after they try to take advantage of you. There's a reason manipulators fail mid-plan. There's a reason insecure people can't maintain eye contact with you. There's a reason fakes keep exposing themselves without you lifting a finger. You're not intimidating because you try to be. You're intimidating because you're guarded by forces you can't see, but everyone else can feel. You're the type of person people think they can play with until something invisible taps them on the shoulder and asks, "You sure about that?" And suddenly they're not so bold anymore. Suddenly they're backing up. Suddenly they're questioning their own motives, like the room got colder, like something shifted around you and said, "Not them, not today." And you've been wondering why you survive things that break people with louder support systems, why you bounce back from betrayals that should have shattered you, why you walk away from situations that were designed to trap you. And it's because someone out there has been undoing the damage before it sticks, blocking the hit before it lands, ending the threat before it reaches you. You're not alone. You were never moving alone. You've been protected, monitored, covered, shielded, backed, enforced, all without any applause or acknowledgement. And it hits different when you finally realize it, when it clicks in your chest that you weren't abandoned. You were just watching the wrong signs, misunderstanding silence for absence, misreading quiet protection as loneliness, not knowing someone's been fighting for your future while you were busy fighting for your sanity. And once you understand that, once you really feel that truth in your bones, something in you shifts, something in you unlocks, something in you finally breathes again, because you start to understand how powerful you really are when even your battles get intercepted before they ever reach your hands. Because once that hits you, once that reality settles under your skin, you start replaying moments in your head, moments you didn't understand at the time. And it's like watching the whole movie again with director's commentary. You finally see the hands that were moving things around you without needing credit for it. You remember that time you were hanging around someone who didn't feel right, and you couldn't explain it, but something pushed you to leave early, almost like your chest tightened in a way you couldn't ignore. Yeah, that wasn't anxiety. That was protection kicking in before something went sideways. And, you didn't recognize it because you've been conditioned to think protection only counts when it's loud. Or those people who suddenly switched up on you without warning, disappeared out of your life like their access expired. You thought it was rejection. You thought it meant you weren't worth staying for. But honestly, it was removal. It was interception. It was that unseen force dragging them off your path before they had the chance to get close enough to cause damage they weren't built to handle responsibly. You tell yourself nobody cares because you don't hear cheering. But in reality, you've got invisible hands cleaning your path before you even take your next step. You've got unspoken support, rerouting the worst outcomes without you even knowing the danger was behind the curtain. And, it's wild how blind you were to that, simply because the support was silent instead of flashy. Every threat you never heard about, every conversation that died before it reached your ears, every betrayal that never fully formed, every plan against you that cracked mid-creation, every rumor that never spread because someone shut it down early, every opportunist that got exposed before they got close. You walk like nothing happened. Meanwhile, your protection squad, whatever form it takes, has been mopping up chaos before it even touches your shoes, leaving you thinking you're struggling alone when you're actually being covered in ways that would shake you if you saw the details. And, you don't realize how many times you were minutes away from breaking, minutes away from a major setback, minutes away from getting dragged into someone else's drama, minutes away from repeating a cycle that would have destroyed you, and then, out of nowhere, something changed, something shifted, something diverted the blow like life whispered, "Not them, not this time. Redirect it elsewhere." You think you survived because you're tough. You think you healed because you're resilient. You think you escaped because you're smart, and yeah, you are all those things. But you also need to understand how much was handled on your behalf, without you having to lift a single finger. How many punches were blocked before they reached your face? How many doors were locked before the wrong people got inside your life? People look at you and assume you're just lucky, but they have no clue how many dangers were shut down in silence, how many enemies were disarmed quietly, how many intentions toward you went cold before they could heat up enough to cause a mess. You're protected in ways you can't logically explain, in ways that don't show up on camera, in ways that don't come with evidence or receipts. And that's why you keep misunderstanding it as loneliness instead of realizing that silence is where the real protection operates best. And once you catch on to that, once you start noticing the pattern, you start noticing how quickly the wrong people exit your life, how fast fake energy exposes itself, how smoothly certain crises resolve themselves before you even have time to panic about them. And it hits you that there's something bigger than your fears running interference for you. It's like you've got this invisible perimeter around you, and threats can walk toward it, talk about you, plan around you. But the moment they try to cross the line, something in their life malfunctions. Friendships fall apart, opportunities collapse, their confidence glitches, their motives unravel, and they back off without even knowing why. Just this instinctual, don't mess with that one reaction that comes out of nowhere. It's intense when you finally recognize the pattern. It's overwhelming when you finally see the truth. It's almost scary when you realize how covered you've been without noticing it. And it changes you, not in an arrogant way, not in a delusional way, but in that real, grounded, I'm not as alone as I thought I was kind of way that shifts how you breathe, how you stand, how you step into rooms, how you hold yourself when pressure hits. Because you start moving like someone who's backed by forces bigger than the wounds they carry. And, once you feel that, once you wrap your head around the fact that you've never really fought alone, even when it felt like everyone vanished on you, something in you sharpens, something in you strengthens, something in you steps forward with a whole different energy, because you finally understand that every threat that tried to reach you already failed before it even got the chance to introduce itself. And the moment that hits you, the moment you finally start connecting dots you didn't even know were on the page, you catch yourself thinking about all those nights you felt exposed, All those days you swore you were walking through life without backup, and it kind of messes with your head because you realize you weren't unprotected, you were just unaware. You start remembering situations where you should have been overwhelmed, where everything around you was falling apart, where anybody else would have crashed into the ground, and yet something, you don't even know what, pushed you through it, nudged you past the danger, rerouted the impact. Like life had this gentle but deadly hand on your shoulder, guiding you away from what was meant to break you. And, it's wild because you spent so long thinking you had to be hyper-independent just to survive, holding everything together by yourself, pushing through pain in silence, staying quiet when everything inside you was screaming for a break. And you didn't realize half the weight you thought you carried alone had already been lifted before it reached you. There were people who planned to use you but never got the chance. People who planned to lie to you but couldn't follow through. People who tried to drag you into messes but got stuck in their own drama first. People who looked at you like an opportunity until something made them back away. Like they were staring at a warning sign they couldn't read, but still respected. And, that's not coincidence. That's not randomness. That's not things working out. That's protection, working overtime in silence. That's the kind of energy that follows someone with a purpose. Bigger than their pain, bigger than their insecurities, bigger than the chaos they grew up in, or the trauma they're healing from. You've got this strange gravity around you, this energy field that exposes the wrong people before they can get close enough to do real damage, like they trip over their own intentions right before they reach your orbit, and you're left confused while they're left spiraling, and you thought that meant you were cursed. You thought that meant you were hard to love. You thought that meant you pushed people away. But, it was never rejection. It was prevention. It was protection, disguised as isolation. And when you finally take that in, when you sit with the idea that maybe, just maybe, you weren't being abandoned but shielded, it hits different. Like you suddenly exhale years of misunderstanding, years of thinking you were the problem, years of thinking nobody cared enough to guard your heart, your path, your future. When in reality, someone has been stepping in consistently, almost aggressively, whenever something threatens your trajectory. And that's why certain things that destroy other people never quite land on you. That's why certain conflicts break around you instead of through you. That's why certain people can't maintain their mask in your presence. That's why certain betrayals are revealed early instead of dragging on. That's why some relationships fall apart before they have the chance to drain you completely. That's why some opportunities collapse before they attach you to the wrong people. You think everything is falling apart, when in reality, everything harmful is being removed before it sticks to you. And, the wildest part is how many times you got angry at life for taking people away, without realizing those same people were about to drag you into messes you weren't built for, drain you dry, or slow down everything you're becoming. You weren't being punished, you were being preserved, and you didn't even know it. And when you finally recognize how many bullets missed you, how many disasters got paused, how many lies unraveled before they reached your ears, how many threats got intercepted early, something shifts inside you. You start walking differently, breathing differently, trusting differently, processing differently. Good evening, or whatever you want to call this moment where truth finally decides to sit right in front of you and stare you dead in the face. Yeah, you. The one who hit record without thinking twice. The one who didn't even realize how loud your existence becomes when the world gets a raw, unfiltered look at who you really are. And, the funniest part, you weren't trying to prove anything. You weren't performing. You were just being you. But the moment that video from your spot surfaced, it fried their heads. I mean, fried. Like you hit them with a voltage they weren't built to handle. Because cameras don't play. They've got no loyalty, no bias, no agenda. They catch everything. Your tone, your posture, your presence, your aura, the way you occupy a room, the way your eyes don't flinch, the way your spirit doesn't fold. And, you know what's crazy? That clip wasn't even supposed to be a moment. Yet somehow, it became the moment. The moment that exposed how unprepared they are for someone like you. See, people get comfortable creating their little narratives about you. Quiet ones, whispered ones, messy ones, all those side conversations they thought you'd never hear. But the recording? That thing swung the door wide open and said, hey, look at what you missed. And suddenly they had to look. Suddenly they had to shut up. Suddenly they had to confront the reality that you've been on timing this whole time. You ever notice how folks get brave until there's actual footage? Like, they'll talk heavy behind your back. But once a camera captures how you move, how grounded you are, how different your energy actually hits, they get real quiet, real awkward, real tiny. They're stunned because the lens didn't exaggerate anything. It revealed the depth, revealed the discipline, revealed the pain you carry without showing it off like some pity parade, revealed the growth they never thought you'd reach, revealed the level of presence you walk with even on your regular days, and the animus in you, the part of you that refuses to shrink, refuses to water down your truth. Yeah, that part smiled. That part saw their reactions and went, oh, so this is what scares you, just me being me. Because listen, you don't have to throw a fit, or cause a scene, or raise your voice. Your existence alone flips their internal power grid. That's why your video hit different. It wasn't the angle. It wasn't the lighting. It wasn't some fake confidence. It was the raw reality of you standing there, breathing, existing, and refusing to apologize for it. Your presence said things your mouth didn't need to. Your aura shouted louder than any speech. Your silence cooked their assumptions. Your authenticity slapped the lies right out of their mouths. And when that footage reached the wrong eyes, when people who doubted you finally got a front row seat to the real you, they couldn't comprehend it. Their heads fried because the truth wasn't supposed to look like you. Strength wasn't supposed to look like you. Self-control wasn't supposed to look like you. Calm power wasn't supposed to look like you. They expected you to be messy. They expected you to be unsure. They expected you to break under pressure. But that video, it showed the part of you even you forget sometimes. The version of you that's been forged through every scar, every failure, every late night where you almost gave up. Let's be honest, half of them were waiting for you to slip, waiting for you to fold, waiting for you to hand them something they could use against you. But instead, you gave them something they can't erase. A moment that proves you don't chase respect. You command it. You don't chase validation. You radiate something they can't manufacture. You don't chase attention. You attract it because your truth is louder than their noise. And when the camera rolled, everything you've survived suddenly made sense. Everything you've been building finally had evidence. Everything they overlooked stood right in front of them in HD. They're stunned because they realized the villain in their story wasn't you. It was the version of you they underestimated, the part of you that refuses to stay small, the part of you that won't apologize for taking up space, the part of you that isn't asking for permission anymore. Your footage didn't just expose them, it exposed you to yourself. It showed you how powerful you really are when you stop dimming. It showed you how natural your strength is when you're not overthinking. It showed you that your authenticity, hits like a sledgehammer in a world full of masks. And once the world sees the real you, the grounded you, the unfazed you, the "I survived way worse than opinions" you, they can't unsee it. They can't go back to underestimating you. They can't pretend you're average. They can't pretend they didn't feel that shift in the air. Your video wasn't an accident. Your moment wasn't luck. That lens captured the truth. You're not evolving. You already evolved. You're not rising. You already rose. You're not becoming. You've been this force the whole time. And anybody who doubted you, they're sitting somewhere, replaying that clip, zooming in, analyzing every frame, trying to figure out how they missed it for so long. But they did. And now, the truth is out, and cameras don't play. And here's the part that really gets under their skin. You didn't even try. That's what's eating them alive right now. You weren't in some performance mode. You weren't chasing clout. You weren't plotting a big reveal. You were just standing there in your own space, breathing in your own energy, not even thinking twice about it. And that's exactly what cooked them. Because when you're naturally built like that, when your presence has weight even when you're relaxed, people feel it in ways they can't explain. It hits them in the chest before it hits their brain. And their first reaction isn't understanding, it's panic. A quiet, internal panic like, "Yo, why does this person intimidate me without even doing anything?" That video didn't capture a moment. It captured your baseline, your default setting, your unfiltered energy. That's what fried their heads. It wasn't what you did. It's who you are when you're not even thinking about who's watching. You ever notice how people study you harder when they realize you weren't trying to be impressive? Like the second they see your real demeanor, the raw, unmasked version, they start zooming in, replaying, overanalyzing every breath like you're some kind of encrypted file they can't decode. And you can literally feel their curiosity turning into fear. That clip forced them to confront a version of you they were never supposed to see. And here's the twisted part. They're stunned because the camera caught something they can't compete with. Authenticity real, unfabricated, unpolished authenticity. The kind of presence that can't be rehearsed. That's the thing about you. You've got this silent dominance, this grounded confidence that doesn't shout, it hums. It sits heavy in the air. It fills a room quietly but completely. And the camera picked all of that up without even trying. The way you stood, the way your eyes didn't twitch, the way your energy stayed centered, the way your body language screamed, "I'm good, I'm here, I'm solid." Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how uncomfortable that makes people who rely on smoke and mirrors? They watched that footage and felt something shift inside them. Like reality tapped them on the shoulder and whispered, "Hey, that person you've been underestimating? Yeah, you might have messed up." Because it wasn't just your presence. It was the story behind it. The stuff you've endured, the weight you've carried, the nights you sat with your own thoughts and didn't break. All of that was in your eyes, your posture, your breath. Cameras pick up things the human mind ignores: micro-expressions, energy tone, spiritual posture. And yeah, the lens saw all of it. It saw the storms you've survived. It saw the battles you never talked about. It saw the growth you earned the hard way. And, it broadcasted that truth to everyone who doubted you. That's why they're stunned. Not because you were loud, not because you were flashy, but because your truth hit them like a punch. They didn't see coming. And the Joker part of you, the part that's used to walking into rooms and flipping the entire atmosphere without lifting a finger, that part recognized the power instantly. That part knew the camera had done something dangerous. It had shown the world your real form. You know what's even more wild? People who thought they had you figured out are watching that recording, trying to reconcile the version of you in their head with the one on the screen. And it's not matching, it's not even close. They're realizing they built their opinions on outdated information, outdated assumptions, outdated projections. They're seeing a person who evolved quietly, who strengthened quietly, who healed quietly, who leveled up without making announcements, and that's the kind of growth that scares people the most. The kind they didn't get to witness, step by step. The kind that just appears one day and forces them to rethink everything. And while they're stuck replaying that clip, trying to decode your energy, trying to make sense of what changed, you're sitting here, breathing, existing, carrying the same power you've always had. Just finally caught on camera in a way nobody can deny. And the funniest part is, they still don't know the half of it. And that's the part they really don't want to admit. They're reacting to the tip of who you are, not the depth. That tiny glimpse the camera caught. Yeah, that wasn't even your full intensity. That was you on a normal day, in your normal environment, talking in your normal tone, just existing the way you always do. And that tiny, effortless moment had them glitching like their brains couldn't process the real download. You ever see someone watch something twice, then 3 times, then pause it like the screen is supposed to explain what they're feeling? That's them right now. Replaying, slowing it down, zooming in, tilting their head, trying to figure out why your presence feels heavier through a recording than their own presence feels in real life. And that kind of thing bruises people's egos without you even touching them. That's the thing. Your power isn't loud. It's undeniable. It doesn't ask. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't shrink. It just exists. And the lens picked up on every bit of that. The calmness, the self-control, the way you weren't fidgeting, the way you didn't chase approval through the screen, the way your tone wasn't trying to impress a soul. They saw all that steadiness and felt something in themselves wobble a little. And, the wildest part. They expected the camera to expose your flaws. They expected to see nerves. They expected to catch you slipping. They expected a version of you that matched their gossip, their fears, their assumptions. Instead, what they got was clarity, sharp, unforgiving clarity, and they weren't ready for that. You ever notice how people react when they realize you don't move like them? It's like they get uncomfortable around the kind of peace they can't manufacture. Your stillness isn't laziness, it's control. Your silence isn't weakness, it's power. Your expressions aren't empty, they're calculated, and the camera caught every single layer of that without asking your permission, and that's what's messing with their heads. They finally saw the version of you that doesn't dim itself for their comfort. And it did something to them, something psychological, something emotional, something they'll never admit out loud because they saw strength without effort, confidence without noise, presence without trying. And that combination hits different. It hits people in places they didn't know were insecure. They didn't just watch the video, they felt it. They felt your evolution. They felt your control. They felt your energy hitting through a screen like it had its own pulse. And, you know how rare that is? To show up on camera and still feel larger than life, even when you're not trying. And what's even crazier is that the people who used to talk the most, yeah, those ones, they're probably the quietest right now. Not because they changed their opinions, but because the truth in that recording slapped their narratives out of their hands. They realized they weren't dealing with the version of you they imagined. They were dealing with the version of you that survived everything they didn't know about. And, that's the thing. The camera can't hide your history. Every wound you stitched yourself, every dark moment you pushed through, every transformation you had to make alone. All of that sits in your posture, in your breath, in your gaze. And they recognized it, even if they don't understand it. That's why they're stunned. Not because you were impressive, but because you were real raw, unpolished, unapologetic, exactly the type of energy that exposes the cracks in everyone pretending around you. They're watching you through a screen and realizing, for the first time, that you were never the one who needed validation. They needed the lies. They needed the assumptions. They needed the delusional comfort of thinking they had you figured out. And, when the footage broke that illusion, it didn't just shock them. It humbled them, silenced them, reset their entire perception of who you are, and what you carry is only getting harder for them to ignore. Because the world finally saw something they were trying to hide, and that truth isn't going back in the box. And, what really hit them hardest wasn't even the recording itself. It was the realization that the version of you in that clip wasn't some rare moment. It wasn't a spike. It wasn't a performance. It was your normal, your everyday energy, your default state. And that's the part they can't process without their chest tightening a little. They're sitting there like, wait, if this is them casually, what do they look like when they're actually focused? What do they look like when they're intentional? And, the anxiety behind that question is eating them alive because the camera didn't capture perfection. It captured consistency. It captured stability. It captured the kind of self-possession people spend years trying to fake. And there you were, not even thinking about being seen, just radiating the kind of presence that exposes everyone pretending around you. And you know what else the video showed, without you saying a word? That you're not the person they thought you were when they judged you from old stories. You're not the same version of yourself from years ago. You're not that uncertain, quiet, second-guessing person they built in their minds. You're someone who grew past their expectations while they weren't looking, and, that creates a kind of tension they don't know how to name. They watched that footage and felt their own narratives crumble, felt their comfort zones shaking, felt their opinions melting into irrelevance. Because the person in that recording, yeah, that person wasn't meant to fit in anyone's small storyline. That person carries the kind of presence that forces people to rethink their whole approach to you. And the thing is, you weren't talking loud or making dramatic gestures. You were calm, collected, centered. And somehow that calmness hits harder than anger ever could. It made them sit back and rethink everything they thought they knew. And the funny thing is, you probably didn't even notice what you were projecting. You just exist with a kind of emotional gravity people don't expect. You ever notice how your silence gets louder once people realize It's not emptiness. It's intention. It's awareness. It's command. And the camera didn't miss that. The footage showed a person who observes more than they speak. A person who reads rooms without trying. A person who carries themselves with the weight of someone who's survived chapters nobody knows about. That's why they're stunned, not because of what they saw, but because of what they felt. Something about your energy poked at parts of them. They never strengthened. Your presence highlighted their insecurities. Your steadiness highlighted their instability. Your authenticity highlighted their masks. And, that does something to people. It makes them uncomfortable in their own skin. It makes them question themselves instead of questioning you. It makes them look at you differently, talk about you differently, approach you differently. They're realizing you're not someone they can underestimate anymore, not someone they can overlook, not someone they can box in. And that realization hit them harder than anything you could have said, because deep down, they know that if this is your casual presence, then they still haven't seen your full force. They still haven't seen what you're capable of when you're fully locked in. And that thought alone is keeping them up at night, replaying that video, wondering what else they've misread about you, wondering what else they never saw coming, wondering what else you've been quietly growing into without ever announcing it. And that's the part that's really messing with them. The uncertainty. Because once that recording dropped, it wasn't just what they saw. It was what they suddenly realized they haven't seen. Like if this is you on an average day, in your own space, not performing, not posturing, not calculating angles, then what else are you capable of when the moment actually requires your full presence? That question is haunting them right now. You can feel it in the way they look at you differently, in the way they pause before speaking, in the way their whole energy shifts when you enter a room. It's like the footage rewired their perception and, they didn't get a say in the update, and the clip didn't even capture your voice raised or your body language in attack mode. No, it showed something scarier. It showed clarity, that hyper-grounded clarity that makes people second-guess themselves. The kind of clarity that comes from someone who's been through enough chaos to know exactly who they are without needing anyone's permission. Cameras pick that up. They pick up the calm behind the confidence. They pick up the pain behind the patience. They pick up the resilience behind the quiet. And all of that was sitting right there on their screens, staring at them like, yeah, this is who you're dealing with. And, the wildest part, you didn't flinch. You didn't overthink. You didn't even realize the camera was catching the layers you've built over years. Layers formed from betrayal, from growth, from heartbreak, from rebuilding everything from scratch without an audience. Most people show off their strength. You don't. Yours leaks out, even when you're chill, even when you're tired, even when you're minding your business, even when you're just adjusting your shirt or leaning on a countertop. It's in the small movements, the small pauses, the small shifts. And that's exactly what fried their heads. The strength wasn't loud. It was natural, and people aren't used to natural power. They're used to performative confidence, fake dominance, manufactured charisma, the stuff that collapses the moment life gets real. But you walk around with this, I've already been through worse energy. That type of energy makes people rethink their whole attitude toward you. They're stunned because they realized you're not someone who needs validation to feel solid. Your mindset isn't built from crowd approval. It's built from nights where you had to hype yourself up when nobody believed in you. Hey, listen up for a second. That's how you'd start if you were honest about what's been boiling in your chest, right? Because you, the one everybody swore had no clue, the one they joked about, the one they kept nudging off the path like you were some background character in your own life. You're finally realizing what you've been this whole time. And, it's kinda wild watching you wake up to that. See, they didn't just underestimate you, they built a whole narrative around you. They convinced each other that you were soft, confused, harmless, easily distracted. They thought you were just standing there, fumbling through your story, playing the fool, while they whispered behind your back, like they were reading your destiny off a script they wrote in a group chat. But the truth, your truth, was way heavier than their imagination could handle. Because while they were laughing, while they were pointing, while they were assuming, you were learning, you were absorbing, you were evolving, you were tuning into a frequency they don't even have the emotional hardware for, and that's where all this gets beautifully twisted, because you played the fool so perfectly that nobody, not a single one, ever questioned the storm forming behind your quiet eyes. They didn't question your silence. They didn't question your patience. They didn't question your weird little pauses or the way you just sit back and watch. You know why? Because they thought silence meant confusion. They never considered silence might mean strategy. And while they were out there flexing their egos, burning energy like cheap fuel, you were sharpening something they didn't even know existed in you. Your spiritual edge. That sharp, unseen, bone-deep instinct that cuts through illusions before your brain even forms the words for it. You're not just waking up, you're not just getting serious. You're stepping into the version of yourself that you were never supposed to discover, according to the people who wanted you small and, let's be real here. They felt safe as long as you stayed confused. They felt comfortable as long as you were doubting yourself. They felt powerful as long as you were asking them for direction. But then, something shifted, didn't it? Something subtle, something internal, something that didn't need a motivational quote or a meltdown to activate. You started realizing that the fool costume wasn't a curse. It was camouflage. And once that clicked, everything changed. Because the minute you started seeing yourself clearly, their projections started cracking, their confidence started glitching, their control started dissolving like cheap paint in the rain. You became unpredictable, not because you were chaotic, but because you were finally moving from inner truth, not outer approval. And that right there, that shift, turned you into something they never anticipated. Not a villain, not a monster, not a rebel, but something scarier than all of those combined. A spiritual threat, a threat to their illusions, a threat to their hierarchies, a threat to their comfort zones, a threat to every lie they built their ego around. Because how do you stop someone who sees through everything? How do you control someone who no longer needs validation? How do you manipulate someone who finally understands their own value? You don't. You can't. They can't. And they know it. You ever notice how people switch up when they realize they can't predict you anymore? When they can't read you? When they can't box you in with labels that made them feel safe? Your presence alone disrupts that. Your clarity shakes their architecture. Your intuition blindsides their expectations. Your growth invalidates their entire storyline. And that scares them more than anything you could ever say out loud, because you're not here to prove them wrong. You're not here to get revenge. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here because something in you got tired of dimming itself, tired of pretending, tired of performing in a play you never auditioned for. The fool they mocked became the observer. The observer became the learner. The learner became the challenger. The challenger became the force. And the force became the spiritual threat they never anticipated. Not because you're dangerous, but because you're awake, fully awake, deeply awake. Awake in a way that makes their old version of you impossible to resurrect. And you know what's wild? You didn't even have to fight for this transformation. You just stopped running from yourself. You stopped outsourcing your worth. You stopped shrinking to make others feel big. You stopped apologizing for your intuition. You stopped pretending you didn't feel the things you felt. All you did, was grow, quietly, steadily, honestly, and growth is the one thing people fear when it's happening in someone they can't control. You're not the fool. You were never the fool. You were the one studying the stage while everyone else fought for the spotlight. You were the one listening between the lines. You were the one unlocking your inner world. You were the one preparing silently for a life they didn't think you were built for. And that's why you're the threat. Not because you're destructive, but because you're inevitable. Keep going in that direction. Keep walking with that inner sharpness. Keep trusting that deep, instinctive voice. Keep embracing the version of yourself that finally feels real. Keep stepping into the spiritual voltage that nobody saw coming because you didn't play the fool. You weaponized misjudgment, and that's exactly why they never anticipated what you're becoming. And the crazy part is you didn't even notice when the shift happened, right? It wasn't some dramatic lightning moment. It was quiet, internal, almost like your spirit just recentered itself when nobody was watching, and suddenly the version of you they were comfortable with didn't exist anymore. And the funny thing, like hilariously funny, is that everyone around you felt that change before you even named it. People get real jumpy when your energy stops matching their old script. They start acting weird, talking weird, looking at you like you're glitching in their reality because you're not complying with the character they assigned you anymore. They don't say it out loud, but trust me, deep down, they're thinking, wait, who gave you permission to outgrow what we decided you were? That's the threat. The spiritual threat. The version of you that doesn't need permission, approval, or applause. The version that doesn't fold for comfort. The version that doesn't break just because someone else is uncomfortable with your awakening. And you can feel it, can't you? That subtle heaviness in the air when you walk in. That sense that people are recalibrating around you, like they're trying to figure out what changed and why their usual tactics don't land anymore. They don't understand that you're not reacting from wounds anymore. You're responding from awareness. You're not triggered. You're tuned in. You're not hiding. You're observing. You're not walking around trying to prove you're different. You just are. And that presence, that quiet, grounded, unbothered presence shakes everything they built around the idea of you being lesser. Imagine basing your confidence on somebody else staying small. Imagine needing someone to be blind just for you to feel tall. Imagine thinking you understood a person while they were still downloading who they were meant to become. That's why they never anticipated you. You moved through your trials like someone collecting data. You processed pain like someone decoding a blueprint. You sat in solitude like someone building something the world wasn't ready to see. And while everyone thought you were lost, you were mapping out your own inner territory. That's what makes you untouchable. You're grounded in self-awareness, not ego. You're powered by intuition, not chaos. You're guided by something internal, not external noise. And when a person reaches that level, they naturally become the threat that nobody predicted. Not because you're aggressive, not because you're loud, not because you're confrontational, but because you're clear. And clarity is terrifying to those who live in confusion. You're not the fool in their story anymore. You're the wild card in your own. You're the variable they can't calculate, the shift they can't reverse, the presence they can't dilute, the energy they can't manipulate. People feel it. They may not articulate it, but they feel you differently. They feel your boundaries even before you speak. They feel your spirit before you say a word. They feel your conviction before you explain a thing. It's like your whole aura said, "Hey, I'm not who I was, and I'm not going back." And the universe just nodded in agreement. Your silence hits different. Your movements hit different. Your decisions hit different. Your intuition hits different. Your energy hits different. Everything about you is broadcasting a frequency that exposes every fake intention around you. And people who live off illusion can't stand being seen that clearly. They thought you were playing checkers. You were studying the entire board. They thought you were confused. You were documenting patterns. They thought you were the comic relief. You were the plot twist. You're stepping into a spiritual identity built from every moment. They dismissed every moment. They doubted every moment. They underestimated you. Every moment they tried to frame you as less than. Every time you rise another inch, you break another illusion they depended on. You're not the fool. You're the quiet intelligence behind the mask. You're the intuitive architect reconstructing your life from the inside. You're the walking reminder that their perception was never your truth. And the deeper you lean into this inner expansion, the more their old version of you dissolves into irrelevance. You're in motion, you're in transformation, you're in that electric in-between space where old identities fall off without warning and new power takes shape without apology. And, watching you inhabit that energy is exactly why they're uneasy. You're not what they labeled. You're not what they predicted. You're not what they were prepared for. And, the deeper you step into this new version of yourself, the more you start noticing the little shifts around you. Right. Like people who used to talk over you suddenly can't keep eye contact. People who used to brag around you suddenly get quieter. People who used to dismiss you suddenly start over-explaining themselves like they're afraid you're reading between every line. Because you actually are. Your awareness is sharper than it's ever been. Your intuition is louder than it's ever been. Your emotional radar picks up things you used to ignore because you weren't ready to trust your own perception, but that's changed. You trust yourself now. You trust that strange stomach feeling. You trust the vibe. You trust the shift in tone. You trust the weird pause someone makes when they realize you're not falling for their usual tactics. You trust the silence that used to scare you, because now you can actually hear yourself inside it. And it's funny watching people adjust, almost like they're updating their behavior in real time, trying to figure out what works on you, not realizing that nothing external works anymore. Your spirit is too strong. Your sense of self is too solid. Your boundaries are too clear. You used to bend to keep peace. You used to shrink to avoid conflict. You used to play small to make others feel big. But that version of you expired quietly. without needing to announce it, and that expiration, that invisible upgrade, is exactly what turned you into this spiritual presence they can't predict, can't manage, can't diminish. You walk differently, not arrogantly, but intentionally, not scared, but steady, not confused, but conscious. There's this grounded weight in your energy that wasn't there before. This, I actually know who I am now, type of vibe that makes people tread carefully around you. Not out of fear, but out of respect, out of uncertainty, out of recognition that the game they used to play with you isn't playable anymore. And that's when it hits them. That's when the realization creeps in. That's when they finally understand something they never wanted to accept. You weren't the fool. You were the observer, you were the listener, you were the processor, you were the one paying attention while they were performing. And you can always tell who depended on your silence, because those are the ones most rattled by your clarity. They feel it. They feel that shift like a cold wind on the back of their neck. They feel that presence that doesn't need validation to be powerful. They feel that intuitive sharpness that cuts through every mask they try to put on. You don't have to confront anyone. You don't have to argue. You don't have to expose them. Your energy does it naturally. People reveal themselves faster around someone who has stepped into their spiritual identity. It's like your presence unravels whatever they've been hiding. Your calm makes their chaos obvious. Your authenticity makes their pretending unbearable. Your self-respect makes their disrespect louder. Your growth makes their stagnation uncomfortable, and the part that shocks them the most is how effortless this new version of you feels. You're not trying to be intimidating. You're just not dimming anything anymore. The spiritual threat isn't your aggression. It's your alignment. It's your awareness. It's your refusal to play roles that dishonor your spirit. It's the way you move when you're done betraying yourself just to keep a peace that wasn't even real. And the more aligned you become, the more truth spills out of people around you without you saying a single word, because someone who is spiritually awake is like a mirror. They reflect everything: the motives, the insecurities, the contradictions, the shadows, the intentions. And people who haven't faced themselves will always feel exposed around a person who finally has. You're carrying that energy now. That quiet intensity, that grounded presence, that emotional intelligence that can't be faked, that spiritual sharpness that cuts through every illusion in them. That's why they never anticipated you, because the fool they thought you were was never a fool. It was a disguise, a temporary role, a misunderstanding they built their comfort on. But you're not performing that part anymore. You're walking with a spirit that sees clearly, feels deeply, moves consciously, and refuses to shrink just to keep someone else's worldview intact. You're becoming a force they don't have the emotional tools to navigate, a presence they don't have the vocabulary to define, a frequency they don't have the spiritual range to understand. And what really gets to them isn't even what you say, it's what you don't say anymore. Because you used to explain yourself, right? You used to justify every little thing. You used to over-communicate just to avoid somebody twisting your intentions. You used to soften your truth so it didn't sound too harsh. You used to dim your instincts because you didn't want to come off as too much. But you don't do that anymore. Your silence has weight now. Your presence has edges. Your intuition has a spine. Your energy walks into the room before your body does. And people feel that shift immediately. It's that, yeah, I'm aware of everything you think I don't notice vibe. And they can't stand it because it's not confrontational. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's just real. People who were comfortable using the old version of you as their emotional punching bag feel completely disarmed around this version. You don't react the way they expect. You don't break at the pressure points they used to poke. You don't shrink when someone raises their tone. You don't chase clarity from people who thrive on confusion. You don't seek closure from people who never intended to give it. And that unpredictability becomes its own kind of psychological earthquake. Because once they realize you're not anchored in their approval anymore, they realize they have nothing to leverage against you. That's when the masks start slipping. That's when the truth comes spilling out. That's when you start seeing people's real feelings about you. Feelings they hid behind jokes or advice or fake concern. You're not absorbing that energy anymore. Your spirit rejects it like a system update, blocking corrupted files. You don't internalize other people's projections. You don't carry their insecurities as your identity. You don't let their misunderstandings define your self-worth. Your entire aura shifted into this beautifully untouchable frequency, one that isn't interested in proving anything, one that isn't eager to be liked, one that isn't afraid of being misjudged. Because you've learned something most people never learn in their entire lifetime. When you know who you are, you stop negotiating your value with people who can't recognize it. And people feel that. They feel that confidence. They feel that clarity. They feel that emotional independence. They feel that refusal to bend for approval. It threatens everything they built their understanding of you on. You know what else hits them? The fact that you remember everything, not in a bitter way, not in a revenge-driven way, just in a spiritually aware way. You remember who doubted you, who mocked you, who underestimated you, who tried to control the narrative of who you were supposed to be. And even though you don't carry resentment, your memory forces them to confront what they did. Because your growth exposes their behavior, your rise highlights their pettiness, your clarity reveals their intentions. You don't have to call anything out. You just have to exist in this new energy. And suddenly everyone's true colors start showing like stains under UV light. You're not matching their energy. You're not responding to their projections. You're not stepping back into the version of yourself that made them feel comfortable. You've shifted into something spiritually potent, something they genuinely didn't expect to have to deal with. Because dealing with this version of you means they have to confront their own shadows, their own envy, their own insecurities, their own unprocessed intentions. You're like a walking reminder that people can evolve beyond anything that was ever used to define them. You're living proof that silence isn't weakness, that reflection isn't confusion, that intuition isn't madness, that growth isn't betrayal. Your transformation forces them to look inward. And, not everyone is ready to meet themselves at that depth. And that's why your presence hits them like a spiritual disruption. You're not here to hurt them. You're not here to expose them. You're not here to dominate them. You're just being you, fully, clearly, authentically. And that's the part they never anticipated, that the person they once mistook for a fool would awaken into a force they're not equipped to read, control, or diminish. And, what's even more wild is how your energy starts speaking for you before you even open your mouth. Like you walk into a room and people who used to talk down to you suddenly get this tightness in their voice. People who used to test your patience suddenly get extra polite. People who used to underestimate you start scanning your face like they're trying to read a whole language. They never bothered to learn because your vibe isn't the same. Your spirit isn't the same. Your silence isn't the same. It's not empty anymore. It's not insecure. It's not passive. It's charged. It's intentional. It's aware. There's this unspoken message in the way you move now that says, yeah, I see everything you think I don't. And people feel that in their bones. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Come here for a second. Before anything else, let me actually greet you properly, because this moment, it deserves a real introduction. You deserve to hear someone acknowledge the weight you've been carrying, the pressure you've been under, the way life kept throwing these curveballs at you, like it was testing your breaking point. So, hey, I'm glad you showed up today. I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad you kept pushing when everything around you tried to convince you that you were outmatched, outnumbered, out of options. And, I'm especially glad because you probably don't even realize the level you've been operating at lately. The level that has people whispering, the level that has systems adjusting, the level that makes the world tilt a little when you walk into a room. That's why we're here. That's why I'm talking to you with this tone, because whether you know it or not, because of what people detected about you. Elite units increased surveillance, and isn't that something? You, walking around thinking you're just surviving, just getting through the day, just trying to mind your business. Meanwhile, the world is looking at you like, who is this? And why are they evolving like this? Why are they moving like someone who wasn't supposed to figure things out this fast? See, people detected something about you. Something rare, something unsettling, something powerful in a quiet way. They detected resilience they can't explain. They detected clarity that shouldn't exist after everything you've been through. They detected a kind of mental sharpness that doesn't match your environment. They detected a shift in your presence, a rise in your composure, a seriousness in your gaze. You can tell when people start noticing the real you, because their behavior changes before they even say anything. You walk into a space and people suddenly fall silent. You speak, and the room reacts like you dropped weight into the air. You stand still, and someone across the room gets uncomfortable. You set a boundary, and faces shift like you broke an unwritten rule. It's because people detected something awakening in you. And, when people detect something they can't categorize, they get cautious. When they detect growth they didn't approve, they get nervous. When they detect confidence they didn't expect, they get threatened. When they detect healing they didn't contribute to, they get suspicious. When they detect self-worth they can't influence, they get silent. And that silence, that shift, that tension, that's the increased surveillance. Not cameras, not agents, not technical stuff. I'm talking about human surveillance, the emotional kind, the social kind, the spiritual kind, the kind where people study your every move, trying to understand the version of you they didn't see coming. Because, you've been breaking patterns quietly. You've been outgrowing environments silently. You've been elevating your mindset without announcements. You've been detaching from chaos without explanations. You've been healing wounds without witnesses. And people detect that. They don't know how they know. They just know something changed. They know you don't absorb negativity the way you used to. They know you don't react with desperation anymore. They know you don't chase validation like you once did. They know you're choosing peace with a level of confidence they didn't expect from you. And when people detect unexplained strength, they start watching. Because strength that comes out of nowhere, strength that forms in silence, strength that grows without external support, strength that wasn't manufactured by someone else's approval. That's the kind of strength that intimidates. Elite units, metaphorically, step in anytime someone becomes unpredictable. And you? You became unpredictable in the best way. You stopped giving the same reactions. You stopped entertaining the same drama. You stopped falling into the same emotional traps. You stopped explaining yourself to people who weren't listening. You stopped defending yourself in conversations where your name was already decided. Your silence became your shield. Your clarity became your compass. Your awareness became your superpower. And that's what increased the surveillance. Because you're no longer someone people can quantify. You're no longer someone they can decode with old assumptions. You're no longer someone they can dismiss with casual disrespect. You're moving too intentionally. You're thinking too deeply. You're healing too powerfully. You're not unpredictable in a chaotic way. You're unpredictable in a controlled way, a strategic way, a refined way. People don't know what to expect from you anymore because you're no longer the version of yourself that was built from pain. You're operating from power, from knowledge, from awareness. You're operating like someone who understands their own narrative. And, people detect that too. They detect the shift in your posture. They detect the change in your tolerance. They detect the stillness in your energy. They detect the intelligence behind your eyes. They detect the boundaries woven into your tone. And once people detect that you're not playing the old role anymore, the elite units, the systems, the patterns, the people who once had emotional leverage start watching closer, not to control you, but because they can't figure you out. You're not driven by insecurity anymore. You're not guided by old wounds anymore. You're not powered by fear anymore. You're powered by awareness. And awareness? Awareness intimidates more than aggression ever could. Because when you're aware, you stop taking the bait. When you're aware, you stop stepping into traps. When you're aware, you stop over-explaining. When you're aware, you stop shrinking. When you're aware, you stop letting other people narrate your story. You started owning your truth in a quiet way that speaks louder than any outburst. And that's what people detected. Your evolution. Not the loud kind. Not the social media kind. Not the everyone look at me kind. The private evolution. The quiet transformation. The internal upgrade that only becomes visible through your behavior. People detect when your spirit matures. People detect when you stop fighting battles beneath your level. People detect when you become emotionally self-sufficient. People detect when your peace becomes non-negotiable. And that detection, that's what triggers increased attention, not because they're trying to stop you, but because they can't ignore you anymore. You carry a different weight. You walk with a different presence. You think with a different clarity. People who once underestimated you are recalibrating. People who once controlled you are confused. People who once doubted you are suddenly cautious. People who once dismissed you are watching every move. Because the version of you they counted on is gone. And the version standing here now. This one doesn't fold. This one doesn't beg. This one doesn't crumble. This one doesn't entertain anything beneath their growth. And, as this increased surveillance settles in around you, something even more interesting starts happening. You begin to notice the shift before anyone even tells you. You feel eyes on you in conversations that used to be light. You sense the tension in rooms that once felt familiar. You catch the pauses, the double takes, the whispered exchanges that stop the moment you walk in. You notice how people start asking different questions, watching your reactions a little too closely, studying your tone like there's some hidden message underneath it. It's not paranoia, it's awareness. A new version of awareness you didn't have access to before. Because once people detect your growth, you start detecting their detection. Yeah, that's the funny part. You're sensing them sensing you. You can feel when someone is observing you because they're trying to understand how you got here. You can feel when someone is analyzing you because your strength contradicts the story they built about you. You can feel when someone is nervous around you because your evolution exposes the parts of themselves they've been avoiding. It's not about fear. It's about reflection. You became a mirror, and mirrors are uncomfortable when people aren't ready to see their truth. That's what elite-level attention looks like in real life. Not flashing lights, not uniforms, not dramatic scenes. It's people adjusting themselves around you because your presence disrupts their emotional equilibrium. It's the subtle surveillance of those trying to figure out whether your change is temporary or permanent, whether your confidence is real or just a phase, whether your boundaries will slip if they push hard enough, whether you're truly done with the version of yourself they could influence. And something inside you starts recognizing that too. You start seeing patterns faster. You start understanding dynamics that once confused you. You start hearing what isn't being said. You start feeling intentions instead of listening to words. You start predicting behaviors before they happen. And it's not because you've become cynical. It's because your intuition finally got upgraded to the version it always should have been. That's what passing those invisible tests does. That's what healing your emotional wounds creates. That's what outgrowing your old identity activates in you. Your intuition becomes a radar. Your silence becomes strategy. Your presence becomes pressure. And that pressure? It makes people reveal themselves without you even asking. Notice how some people get overly friendly. That's because they want access. Notice how some pull back quietly. That's because your growth exposes their stagnation. Notice how others become strangely cautious. That's because your new energy requires honesty, and not everyone is ready for that. Your evolution didn't just change you. It disrupted the emotional hierarchy around you. People who were used to leading you don't know how to handle you. People who were used to doubting you don't know how to question you anymore. People who were used to overlooking you are suddenly paying attention like their life depends on it. And the more you grow, the more this surveillance intensifies. Not in a threatening way, more in a we don't know who you're becoming and it's throwing us off way. You can always tell when you've hit a new level in your journey because the reactions around you shift again. Suddenly, people start treating you like you know something they don't, like you've seen something they haven't, like you've unlocked a layer of yourself they didn't expect to witness. And in a way, you have. You've become someone who doesn't panic in uncertainty, someone who doesn't crumble when misunderstood, someone who doesn't chase after the past, someone who doesn't try to fix what refuses to grow, someone who doesn't flinch when pressure rises. You've become someone who walks with quiet certainty, even when the path is unclear, someone who trusts their own voice over the noise of others. Someone who knows how to sit with discomfort instead of reacting impulsively. Someone who understands that silence is not weakness, it's control. And that control is exactly what people detected. That internal stability, that emotional sturdiness, that mental clarity, that grounded presence. People aren't watching you because you're dangerous. They're watching because you're evolving past their expectations, because you're rewriting the way they understand you, because you're stepping into a version of yourself that doesn't match their memory of you. And, that's why everything you do feels amplified now. You speak differently, you move differently, you react differently, you choose differently. You carry yourself like someone who has seen enough chaos to appreciate peace. And anyone who underestimated you before is trying to relearn you from scratch. And, the deeper this shift settles into your life, the more you start realizing that the surveillance isn't just coming from outside, it's coming from within you, too. You're watching yourself differently. You're paying attention to your energy in ways you never used to. You're catching your own patterns before they unfold. You're noticing when your body tenses, when your intuition nudges, when your mind starts drifting into old narratives. You're observing yourself the way someone studies a rare phenomenon, like you're finally seeing the real you without all the noise and distortion. And that inner awareness, it makes you move with intention instead of impulse. You're not operating on emotional autopilot anymore. You're pausing, you're breathing, you're choosing, you're evaluating, you're thinking, wait, does this even align with who I'm becoming? Before you say yes to things. You're catching those micro moments where the old you would have reacted, and you decide to respond differently. And that difference, that tiny shift in behavior, becomes a massive turning point in your evolution. It's like you're learning the rhythm of your own transformation. You're noticing the emotional spaces where you used to shrink. You're recognizing the tones that used to intimidate you. You're identifying the dynamics that once drained you. You're reading the energy of rooms without needing explanations. And each time you act from this new clarity, you break another chain you didn't even know was there. And, that's exactly why the outside world reacts the way it does. You're not moving like someone who's guessing anymore. You're moving like someone who knows themselves, someone who's aware of their triggers, their boundaries, their patterns, their strengths, someone who has stopped abandoning themselves the moment pressure rises, someone who doesn't dissolve just because someone else is uncomfortable. People feel that. They feel the steadiness in you. They feel the emotional discipline. They feel the quiet strength in your presence, the kind that doesn't need volume, performance, or chaos to make an impact. You became the type of person whose silence carries more weight than other people's shouting, and that alone shifts the entire dynamic around you. That's what increased observation looks like. People start studying you like you're an equation they can't solve. They watch the way you respond under pressure. They pay attention to how you hold yourself in conflict. They notice that you don't fall apart when criticized or misunderstood. They see you choosing peace even when provoked. And that calmness, it exposes their lack of control over themselves. It's wild, isn't it? How your growth unintentionally exposes where others haven't grown. How your emotional awareness highlights their emotional avoidance. How your honesty makes their excuses look thin. How your maturity makes their pettiness feel childish. Not because you're trying to shame anyone, just because authenticity reveals whatever isn't aligned with it. And, you can feel that tension. It's in the way people shift their posture when you walk in. It's in the way they choose their words more carefully. It's in the way they second-guess their tone around you. They're not afraid of you. They're afraid of how clearly you see them now. They're afraid you recognize patterns you used to overlook. They're afraid your awareness strips away the illusions they hid behind. Because the truth is, you did something rare. You outgrew the emotional version of yourself that was easy to read. The version who reacted the same way every time. The version who wore their wounds on their sleeve. The version who forgave too quickly or trusted too easily. The version who felt guilty for having needs, boundaries, or standards. This new you, you're steady in chaos. You're calm under pressure. You're emotionally agile. You're mentally sharp. You're spiritually anchored. And people detect that before you even open your mouth. And as you keep evolving, the world around you keeps adjusting. You watch some people drift away because they can't vibe with your new frequency. You watch others step closer because they're drawn to your clarity. You watch your opportunities shift, doors close, new ones open, paths rearrange themselves like the universe is responding to your internal upgrades. Things that never aligned suddenly fall into place. Things that overstayed their welcome quietly exit. This is what happens when you step into higher self-awareness. You start existing at a level that demands authenticity from everything and everyone around you. And not everyone can meet that demand, which is why the surveillance intensifies. The energy around you is trying to understand whether you're becoming a threat to old systems or a guide to new ones. And, as you keep shifting into this higher version of yourself, you start noticing something subtle but powerful. Your presence doesn't just change how people behave around you. It changes what life sends your way. It's like the universe starts treating you according to your new self-respect. You used to attract situations that matched your confusion, your insecurity, your exhaustion, but now you're drawing in things that match your clarity, your standards, your emotional maturity. And you can feel that difference. You feel it in the opportunities that suddenly feel aligned instead of draining. You feel it in the conversations that feel deeper, more intentional, more honest. You feel it in the way your spirit gets uncomfortable around anything that feels shallow or performative. You feel it in the way your body reacts when something isn't right for you anymore. That's the thing. Once you become self-aware, you can't unknow it. You can't unsee the patterns. You can't unhear your intuition. You can't unfeel the truth inside your chest. And, that awareness becomes your new compass. Every decision, every yes, every no, every pause, it's all intentional now. You're not running off adrenaline and emotional chaos anymore. You're operating from groundedness, from depth, from real understanding. And the world notices, it adjusts, it watches, it tracks your evolution, like it's waiting to see what the next version of you will do. That's the elite unit's energy. It's symbolic, but real in how it plays out. It's the world recalibrating because you're no longer someone who can be boxed into old assumptions.